You know, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is such a weird game to me. My emotions fluctuated so much during my playtime that at some points I didn't even know if I was enjoying the game or just pushing through for the sake of this review. In fact, it took me just as long to finish this game as it did Odyssey, except the difference is I didn't platinum Valhalla. I platinumed Odyssey. That explains my 90 plus hour playtime. But with Valhalla, I clocked in almost 97 hours. I don't know if it was really worth it in the end. And that's not even, again, going for a platinum. But after sitting down and talking to my best friend and discussing things with Assassin's Creed fans and clanmates, and kind of sitting with my thoughts, I think I finally figured out how I feel about this game. So without further ado, this is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So Assassin's Creed Valhalla is the 12th mainline entry in the series and was released on November 10th, 2020. A year that, for worse, will live in infamy. It was developed by Ubisoft Montreal and Ubisoft Milan, although after doing some more research, apparently 12 different studios worked on this title, which I don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Valhalla had hype and caution around its initial announcement. People had long awaited a Viking setting for Assassin's Creed, and Ubisoft was about to deliver. Valhalla was teased all the way back in Division 2, and that's where the hype really started. However, coming off the mixed reception of its previous release, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, longtime fans were skeptical. And honestly, I was among them. I had made a video discussing a deep dive developer interview that had released when the game was revealed. At the time, I was cautiously optimistic. However, going back and rewatching that video for the sake of this review, it seems what they initially promised us didn't really pan out the way they had set it up. But let's start with the narrative. Now, as with all my reviews, I'm going to stay away from any in-depth spoilers because I do think if someone wants to play the game, that's the best way for them to experience the narrative, not listening to someone like me just rattle off points from an outline. So the game opens with a Viking feast. You take control of a young Eivor, and you can go around interacting with people, taking in the sights and the sounds, and eventually talking to your father. But before you know it, a rival clan raids your settlement, and chaos ensues. Eivor manages to escape, but not before getting attacked by a wolf. This leaves Eivor with a massive scar that spawns their nickname, Wolf-Kissed. Afterwards, the game transitions to the modern-day story where you take control of Layla once again, with returning assassins, Sean and Rebecca. Now this is where I had a bit of excitement, but also where I had a bit of a problem. I was excited to see Sean and Rebecca return, because if I recall correctly, we really haven't seen them since Assassin's Creed Syndicate. And so far, they are like the only two threads that are tying these games together, at least back to the old guard. But my problem is with Layla. And I'm not saying she's a bad character. During this intro segment where you kind of get reintroduced to the modern day setting, the characters reference the staff that Layla acquired in the end of Odyssey. Okay, that's fine. But they discuss some apparently terrible event that happened, which requires Layla to now wear a dampener to sever her tie with the staff. I was utterly confused when this happened, and here's why. I didn't play the Atlantis DLC, and apparently, all of this big plot relevant stuff happened in the DLC. So, the ending I saw at the end of Odyssey wasn't its final ending. And if you go back to my review, I don't know if I mention it, it could be in the spoiler discussion, and I'll leave links for those in cards and in the descriptions down below. But I felt like the game didn't have an ending, right? You do all these story threads and then it's just like, okay, go explore Greece. Now I know why. It's because they wanted you to play the DLC. And crap like that just really pisses me off. Don't sit there and assume as a developer, oh yeah, players are gonna love this game enough where we don't have to put the ending in the main campaign. We could put it in the DLC. No! Release a finished game. Give me a start, a middle, and an end. Bookend them, and then if you want to develop things, or you want to hint at things that could come, then do it in DLC. I think the older games actually did this, like Brotherhood or 2, there was DLC with Ezio, and I believe it hinted at Revelations. But I digress, let's get back into it. So once you're ready to head back into the Animus, the game asks you the tried and true Pokemon professor question, are you a boy or are you a girl? Now Odyssey did this too, however with Odyssey, Cassandra ended up being the canonical choice. Ubisoft just kind of didn't tell us that until the novel came out. However, Valhalla gives you a third choice. This time around, it lets you choose whether you want to be a boy, a girl, or if you want the Animus to pick and change Eivor's gender based on the scenario. Now, in all my research, it seems that this is the canonical way to play the game. Ubisoft, I don't think, has come out and stated, like, yes, this is canon, but this is the option I went with. In the opening hours, you explore Norway and eventually decide to say peace and leave Norway with your brother to go to conquer England. From here, you go out and forge alliances all across England, attempt to build up your settlement, raid monasteries, and get wrapped up in politics. Oh yeah, there's a couple assassins here, so you know, that's good, I guess. That's pretty much it. Or at least the basics of the plot. The Order of the Ancients returns, and there's like a little things here or there, but I really don't want to go into them too much because I do think it should be experienced so that you can make your own decision. But let's talk about what you'll be doing for the bulk of your playtime. Okay. Valhalla is a blend between Odyssey and Origins. That's honestly the best way I can describe it. You'll visit your alliance table and you'll pick a zone to form an alliance with, and then you'll depart. Now, once you're there, you'll do various tasks for and with characters you meet. These range from going hunting to taking out King Alfred's men, causing havoc, and investigating areas. Most arcs end with some sort of big siege on a fortress. Now, these are pretty neat, and honestly, these were some of the high points for me during my playtime. You rally the troops, you push through, you break down gates, you use battering rams, and you just slaughter hundreds and hundreds of guards until you reach your objective. Now, things will change slightly from zone to zone, but mostly it's all relatively the same. Gone are the question marks hiding what's on the map. Once you scan a viewpoint, your map will be filled with colored dots indicating different things. Blue is for side activities, like short side quests, cairn challenges, visual puzzles, parkour challenges, and a few optional bosses. White represents artifacts, like Roman masks, tattoo designs, or treasure maps. Yellow indicates ingots for crafting, or armor and weapons. Speaking of crafting, unlike the previous two entries, Valhalla introduces a whole new upgrade system. Gear in Valhalla has 4 rarity levels: gray, bronze, blue, and gold, which you can upgrade at a blacksmith using ingots you found in the world. Armor costs 1 ingot, and weapons cost 3. Now, depending on what zone you're in, that will determine what ingots you can find in the area. So, I would go around and find a chest, and if it wasn't the ingot I needed, let's say I needed gold tungsten and the zone only had a nickel ingot, I wouldn't go after any other chests in the area because I know that all the other chests are only going to be nickel ingots in this zone. On top of these major upgrades, you can also slot in runes that you find in the world that change minor stats like evasion, defense, fire resistance, stuff like that. And you can also upgrade your armor's minor stats with leather and iron ore that you can find in the world. Leather you can get by hunting and killing animals, and iron ore you can just kind of get by breaking little mining nodes across the world. Eivor also has her own upgrade trees. There are more points in these trees than in the previous two games combined. Each tree consists of minor nodes and one major ability node, which can either be a passive ability or an active ability depending on the tree, like engaging a slow motion mechanic when you get a perfect dodge. These points contribute to Eivor's power level, which, like previous games, gatekeeps you from going to certain zones too early. In fact, I had my fair share of butt kickings because I was not high enough power level. Honestly, none of this really feels impactful. In fact, I was able to make it through the entire game using the starting gear. Like the armor you get at the beginning of the game, the weapons you get at the beginning of the game, I used those with the exception of the bow, which I changed out. I used those through the entire game by just upgrading them at my blacksmith and going and chasing those different ingots. And in terms of the skill points and the skill tree, it just all seems so bloated. By my end time, I had almost every tree filled out, and I can only ever remember using maybe one or two abilities, like the chain assassination or the slowed down time that I mentioned earlier. Actually, that's one good thing Valhalla does is assassinations are back. There's an option in the menu where you can turn on or off one-hit assassinations, and I did that, and it was really great. Again, all of these skills and ability just feel like checkboxes. They don't feel like they impact my gameplay by any means. So what else is there to do, you may ask? Well, remember those two assassins I mentioned earlier? They play a part in the narrative, but they also bring in one of the main pillars of the game, and that's hunting down codex pages and Order of the Ancient members. Like Odyssey, there is a massive list of targets to hunt down and assassinate. And you heard me right, I said assassinate. The Hidden Blade returns, and like I mentioned just now, assassinations are back. You can do one-hit assassinations, kind of. You play this sort of mini game where when you get ready to stealth kill somebody, you get behind them and a little reticle appears, and as it zooms in, you have to hit it at the right time, and that will let you do a stealth attack. Honestly, it's pretty mindless and pretty easy, and compared to older games, it's just an extra button press to guarantee the same outcome. Now, these branches all have a head target, and there is one final Order of the Ancients member, and you get to them and you find all these members by uncovering their locations. Now, this is done sometimes by finding clues during exploration or via story missions. Each one nets you a medallion, and by returning to Hytham with a set number every so often, you get a new ability in combat or an upgrade for that ability. The codex pages, however, can only be found in the ruins of old assassin bureaus. There are only 6 bureaus in total, and they are scattered about the map. These were honestly some of my favorite moments while playing, not because they were super engaging or big set pieces, but because they felt like Assassin's Creed. You go down into them and you solve a small environmental puzzle, you nab the codex page and whatever assassin armor or weapon, and that's it. Unfortunately, there's no real payoff for doing all of these, or for hunting all of the Order members. There's a very small epilogue that makes reference to some previous things in the franchise, but other than the armor you get from completing the bureaus, you don't really get anything else. Now, one of the big selling points for this game was raiding and upgrading your settlement. Ubisoft promised that the settlement was going to be this big integral part of the story and that you would see alliances form and crumble from within it. They lied. There's one story-specific building you need to upgrade. Everything else is purely secondary unless you're going for the trophy of raising your settlement level to level 6. Now, the buildings you do upgrade, some of them can net you small side quests, but half of them just turn into collectathons that net you ship cosmetics or tattoos. But since I rarely used my ship, I never bothered chasing these things. You can place a set number of different cosmetics in your settlement that you get from shops. And if you have the buildings, you can hold feasts, which give you a stat buff for an extended period of time. Kind of like eating in Final Fantasy 15 or Kingdom Hearts 3. But to upgrade your settlement, however, you need to raid monasteries for supplies and materials. Now, the first couple of raids are fun because they're new and they're different, but after the third or fourth one, you realize the formula never changes. You sail your longboat to the yellow circle, you hit triangle when you're in the circle, you make your way to all the chests, and you open them all. That's it. That's literally all you do. Also, if you plan on upgrading your settlement to max level like I did, then I hope you're ready to do all the raids and open every minor chest in each monastery, because that's the only way you'll get enough materials, because there are just enough to get all the upgrades in your settlement. Okay, now that covers gameplay, but let's talk about how the game looks and runs and sounds. Right off the bat, if you play this game, please play it on a next-gen console. I originally started on PS4, and that's how I captured all the footage for this review. However, about midway through my playthrough, I nabbed a PS5, and I switched, and good golly Miss Molly, the quality jump is astounding. It runs at a crisp 60 FPS on PS5 in 1080p. I'm sure you can do 4K. I believe it's got an HDR setting. The lighting is more detailed. Vistas look much cleaner, and facial animations are a bit better. However, regarding that last one, they still dip into Uncanny Valley and get real stiff from time to time. Sound-wise, the music is great, and the sound effects are good too. Overall, it looks good, and it sounds good. But it looks much better at a distance than up close. When you're on a viewpoint and you're scanning the environment and the sun hits the horizon, it's just breathtaking. But up close, talking to people, you see the cracks start to show. Some of the one-on-one conversations are animated really well, but some of them, the developers were just like, it's good enough. I also ran into a fair share of bugs during my playtime. However, because I was on PS5, I don't have the footage for that. But there was one point during one of the special segments of the game, and if you play them, they involve the seer, so you know which part I'm talking about. But Eivor's axe would kind of like float next to her, even while I was like sailing and running. Like it would just like float like a little robot buddy. Characters wouldn't load during certain dialogue segments, and sometimes button prompts just wouldn't work. It was really finicky. I had to like stand just right for the talk button prompt to come up. But overall, I didn't run into too many bugs. I didn't have too many crashes, maybe once or twice. It was a pretty stable experience for me, and for that, I am thankful. Okay. That's everything. And, you know, towards the end, the narrative does some really interesting things, and it got me a little excited. But the problem is they don't go anywhere with it. They don't do anything with it. They start to show you some really fun stuff, and then before you know it, it's just like, bam. Now, I thought Odyssey was a really long game, and in fact it is, but Valhalla feels longer to me, and not in a good way. Valhalla tries to make you feel like you're going on this big grand adventure like Odyssey. However, Valhalla feels very samey. It's a lot of busy work. England compared to Greece is very similar, except you have the northern snowy region, and then you have all green in the middle, and then a little bit of coastline. But narratively, it does some really interesting things, but only towards the end of the game, and they don't really pay off. So you sit there and you do all three of your main story threads, you upgrade your settlement, you get all the Order of the Ancients medals, you know, you do the main story, and in the present day, they start to hint at things, and they start to kind of tease a little something, but it just it doesn't go anywhere. And honestly, it's really disheartening because the moments where I was getting the most invested in the modern day assassin plot, in the actual Assassin's Creed part of this game, Ubisoft just kind of goes, nope, no, 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 no. That's all you get. We're not, no. And it feels like Odyssey in that regard, where you get to the end and you do everything and there's no payoff. It's just kind of like, hey, good job. Yeah, go explore England. There was no real benefit to upgrading my settlement all the way to level 6. There was no real sense of accomplishment by doing all the Order of the Ancients or all the Codex pages. You get a epilogue, so to speak, and it does delve into a little something from previous games, but that's it. Overall, Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a good game. I wouldn't say it's an amazing game, and I wouldn't say it's a must-play, but in the general, is it worth playing for your average gamer? Yeah. If you like open world RPG-esque titles that are kind of in the same line as The Witcher 3, Valhalla is that formula. But if you're a diehard Assassin's Creed fans, while I do think this is better than Odyssey in some regards, in other regards it's very much on the same level. But my biggest gripe with it is it feels very bloated. It feels very aimless. A lot of the side stuff you can do is just all very samey. They're just checklists and boxes to cross off, much like Odyssey, and there's no real payoff. Now, there are some legendary items you can do things for. There's a certain sword. There's other pieces of gear that have other little things tied to them. Like if you kill 3 mini bosses that are scattered across the world, you get a certain legendary item, but I didn't really care to do them. They didn't feel interesting to me. In fact, by the time I finished my playthrough, I was just ready to quit. I was like, all right, that's it. In fact, as soon as I'm done recording footage for this review, I'm uninstalling the game. I'm not buying Wrath of the Druids. Also, one other thing I forgot to mention in the review is that, yes, there's an in-game cash shop, and there's a lot of blowback this time around, not because of time skips, but because a lot of the cosmetics, not a lot, but there's a good handful of cosmetics in the in-game shop that look identical to gear you can earn in the game. So it's really weird. That's all I have to say on this game in particular. So if you did like the review, please hit the like button. Click the subscribe button to know when I post a new video, and the notification bell to get all the notifications about when they go live. Other than that, let me know down in the comments what your thoughts were on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Assassin's Creed as a whole. Are you happy with the direction the franchise is going in? Are you a little wary that the fact that Ubisoft was like, no, we're going to keep pushing in open world RPGs? Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next review. And until then, always remember to keep gaming. I'll see you then.